Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Adam, and you are watching Unlimited Options Investing. Both the stock market and crypto has been very volatile. I know with stocks, ever since, let's say, the open on Tuesday, things were looking pretty okay. And then ever since then, it's just everything's gone down pretty much. And that sell-off has felt like it has accelerated ever since then. And things have just gone down. I know with crypto as well. Specifically, I want to take a look at the candlestick chart because the last few times on the channel, we took a look at the uptrend and the downtrend, and they were coming kind of to an end to where they were going to meet. And stock prices, the price action tends to compress in between them. And then the closer they get, the more likely it's going to break out toward the upside or the downside. And in this case, I'm sure as you are well aware, Bitcoin chose the downside, now hovering and flirting with the $40,000 mark. I think the last time I checked, it was around 41,300 or so. I think, is that what it got to? Because Ethereum and all the altcoins pretty much follow what Bitcoin does, as it is the, let's say, the crown jewel of crypto. So stocks, they're their own story. The Nasdaq is hovering around a major buying area that it needs to find some pressure. If we break this area, potentially we could fall further. So we'll take a look at the Nasdaq, the QQQ, the S&P 500, as well as crypto. How long will the sell-off go on? Are we going to consolidate and just continue making newer lows? I mean, these days, anything is possible. We'll take a look at the candlesticks and all of that. So if this is your first time on the channel, welcome aboard and hit that subscribe button. Here at Unlimited Options Investing, we talk everything from stocks, crypto, options, ETFs. We're investing for the long term. As always, smash that like button and let's get started. All right, starting off with the Nasdaq. So we can see that we opened up near where we closed yesterday. It's like, okay, are we going to find buying pressure from where we closed yesterday? And then we're okay. And then all of a sudden around 10 o'clock, the volatility increases and we fall from 385 very quickly, let's say in about 1 hour, about 1.57%, which is quite a drop for the Nasdaq. I mean, 1% drop in 1 day is quite a bit, but to have it in one trading hour is pretty volatile. But in context, that also comes, let's say, the last 5 days where we have been seeing increased selling ever since, again, that Tuesday open. We opened at about 400, and ever since then, falling right to 395, consolidating a little bit in that range, and falling again late on Wednesday from 390 all the way down to about 382. We're right now even a bit lower from there. Taking a look at the S&P 500, so we see again that sell-off. Again, we're only down 0.35% relative to the Nasdaq, which is down about over 1%. At the last 5 days for this one, we see that on Tuesday morning we didn't have that sell-off in the S&P 500, mainly because I think energy and financials were keeping the S&P 500 afloat, whereas technology was bringing it down. But then we see over here again late on Wednesday we have that drop from 475, about a 2% drop to about 466, more or less where we are trading right now. And that's mainly because as well the Dow Jones and industrials haven't been hit as much lately. Again, with all the scares of potential of increasing rates faster than expected, these industrial names aren't as high in valuation. These high-flying tech stocks and high multiple stocks, and looking at the last 5 days for this one as well. So actually on Tuesday where the Nasdaq went down, the S&P 500 wasn't bothered. The Dow Jones was actually going up, but then we do see again that sell-off late on Wednesday, going from 368 on the DIA ETF, about 1.73%. So pretty substantial, but nothing too crazy, unlike the Nasdaq, which has been hit the hardest. Oh man, and taking a look at crypto, so Bitcoin, again, 41.6 thousand, down 3% in the last day. Ethereum down 6.73% at 31.72. Solana at $138, down 21.25% over the last week. Cardano down 10% over the last week at $1.23. This one looked like it was recovering just a couple of weeks ago. XRP at 76.5 cents, down 10% over the last week. Dogecoin at 15 cents. Shiba Inu down 16% over the past week. Polygon down 21% over the past week. Crypto.com coin down 20% over the past week. Decentraland down 8% over the past week. Everything high risk is not safe these days. This is the very first chart I want to take a look at, guys. So remember, we had this uptrend here in August. We touched over here in September. We touched over here when we had that sell-off. So we had 1, 2, 3 points that were supporting this trend line, and then we had this downtrend ever since, let's say, sometime in November, reaching this trend line, selling off, reaching the trend line, selling off. So again, both these trend lines were coming to kind of a halt, and it had to choose Bitcoin which trend line it was going to follow and break out from. And we can see here that it fell toward the downside. I mean, it can come right back up and decide
to do something completely different. But for the time being, we're seeing weakness for now, even though we do have a wick on the bottom of this candle showing that we have found some buying pressure, which again, I think 40,000 is a very strong psychological area. If it breaks that, then all of a sudden you're below 40,000, then you go 39, 38, 37. So let's see that 40,000 potentially hold. Maybe we find some buying pressure, and then we can look at another potential trend that's being formed. Otherwise, this one is toward the downside for the time being, and then let's just see from there. If you're long on Bitcoin, you buy and you hold, and that's pretty much it. If you don't like it, then you don't even touch it. You just watch the massacre unfold in front of you. But if Bitcoin does, as so many people believe, go up to 100K and beyond, then you can't be upset either that you didn't take the risk. Ethereum. All right, so this one, we've been saying that we're not going to look at this until it does something, and it did something. It sold off in the last 1, 2, 3 days. Ever since it was at 3,800, it just went down and down, reaching a low of this candle at about 3,067, which also makes sense because we did find some buying pressure at the end of 2021. But I mean, and again, anything can happen. We're just drawing these potential areas of buyers could step up, but really they can step up at any point. But right now, surely all the sentiment is out of crypto until we see some kind of recovery, and then we see the sentiment return in a potential uptrend, but who knows when that will potentially happen. All right, so the NASDAQ. So the first thing I'm going to do is lower this horizontal line to, let's say, the bottom of where these wicks are touching. Even though it was touching the top of this resistance, we're going to put it over here because that's where we've been trading as of late. We are also approaching the bottom of our ascending channel. So if we want to see some kind of buying pressure, we want to see it a little bit sooner than later, because if we continue getting more and more and more weakness, then we're going to break this support line. We're going to break this trend line that we've been respecting for oh so long. We are well off our moving averages, so let's see if we can have some kind of comeback or consolidation over the upcoming couple of weeks. Next up, the S&P 500, similar kind of story. We're still between that 20 and that 50 EMA. Yesterday, we see that indecisive candle, that doji candle, the long wicks on both sides, an open and the close near each other. And the market hasn't chosen yet exactly what it wants to do, the S&P 500 being the most important chart. A mix of all technology, energy, financial, real estate, and so on. Even though technology makes up such a big portion of it. And to note, we're also in that channel from 450 to about 470. We're back on the top of that channel. So let's see where we find support, as well with the Dow Jones. This one faring again a little bit better. It's finding some nice buying pressure from that 20 EMA. So let's see if this one can hold. Let's see if the industrials can hold. And honestly, the market is just the flow of money going from one area to another. Sometimes money comes out, but it usually comes right back in, just in a different form, in a different sector, in a different area. And again, looking for that rotation of money. So where's most of the money going into? What's green? So obviously the inverse, the short ETFs are going up, obviously. But what other sectors are going up? We see energy. We see energy up 10%. Financials are up. Oil, commodities, even though silver and gold aren't doing as well, with pretty much the rest of the equity markets pretty much not doing that well. All right, and taking a look at a few stocks. So we have Apple here below our 20 EMA on the daily. We see a rejection yesterday, and today also a rejection, even though we're seeing a little bit of buying pressure today. Nothing indicative yet, but we are seeing a pretty clear double top from the beginning of December and the end of December into January. So if this continues selling off, this could pretty much confirm. And the next stop we're looking at pretty much would probably be the 50 EMA at around 165. And let's say we continue selling off past the 50 EMA. We touch this trend line, which was the previous resistance back in October, around the 160 level, and consolidate or start to rebound from those areas. All right, next up, Microsoft. So I bought the dip on this one, but way too early. I also sold a put at, I think it was on Tuesday, and that ended up being a huge mistake with the rest of my losses in technology. But what I'm going to do at the end of the day is buy back the put and then roll it over to, let's say, the 305 strike, at which point Microsoft becomes an even more attractive buy for the long term. And if it doesn't go there and we find buying pressure, again, of course, in case they raise interest rates like really, really soon. Otherwise, if I had more cash, Microsoft would be the one stock I would be buying today. Looking at Google next, this one as well has really just fallen off near an area that we found buying pressure before in the 2700s. Again, I've pretty much built out my Google position, but if I had more cash, I would also be buying more Google, not to mention Amazon. Honestly, all the FANG stocks, when they go down, you just buy them, really. Again, I drew this buying pressure where we saw points in August, a little bit in October, more so in December. See this downtrend, it was compressing, and then it chose violence, and it went down. Now we're trading at around 3,200. And I'm really finding that both Amazon and PayPal are kind of the two big cap stocks that have a lot of investors' eyes on them because they have underperformed relatively for such big cap companies, especially over the past 12 months. Next up, looking at Meta Platforms, and again, this one has no idea what it wants to do because, again, in my opinion, the valuations are so low, it hasn't seen as much of a sell-off, especially because it didn't really recover from the sell-off back in September, again, in the middle of our range. It's so confused what it wants to do. We're seeing a doji candle even though the day isn't over in the middle of our range. Again, in my opinion, just a waiting game for Meta Platforms. I can't wait till the ticker symbol changes, not that it changes anything fundamental about the company. I mean, maybe it does in brand and direction of the company, but at the same time, it shouldn't change anything fundamentally with the stock price, but maybe it'll bring some kind of momentum, maybe not, probably not. Let's see what happens with that one. Looking at Tesla, this one has lost pretty much all its gains ever since those delivery numbers have been announced, but that makes sense with the market showing so much weakness. Even though Tesla stock can do whatever it wants, it does have a high beta, so when the Nasdaq falls, Tesla will also likely fall unless something amazing is happening. Tesla stock is just being Tesla stock, but right now we're sitting at 1,040. We very, very nicely filled in that gap from last week Friday to this week's Monday's gap. Again, sitting between the 20 and the 50 EMA, finding buying pressure right off that 50, so let's see if that one holds. Let's see if the $1,000 mark holds and go from there. All right, NVIDIA stock, again, at a major area of support at around the 270, 275 level. If this one breaks, we could be filling in this gap at around 268. And if we see even increased weakness, remember, NVIDIA is a very volatile stock toward the upside, as we saw a lot in 2021, but also toward the downside as well. I think 200 simple moving day average is somewhere around 215, somewhere in that area, which is also conveniently nearby where we have this gap at around 230, which was also previous resistance back in August and September. So could we fall? Absolutely. Are we going to? No idea. Let's see if we hold this 270 level and then go from there. And Shopify stock, this one is such a massacre as well. It is now officially oversold under the 30 and the RSI. We are well disconnected from both moving averages. This one is also very volatile, both toward the upside and the downside. We went from 1350 all the way up to 1760 in 1 month. So to see this huge decline, at this point, how much are we down? So right now we're at 1150, let's say, divided by that all-time high, let's say at about 1750 minus 1. We are 35% off our all-time highs for Shopify. And actually this one, if we take a look at the weekly and we zoom out, we see that 50 EMA has been sliced through. And this is always held up for Shopify stock. We see back in May of 2021 when we had a lot of weakness in the market. Back in the crash of 2020, even the 50 EMA held up, even though we went below it a little bit. We found that buying pressure. If we don't find that buying pressure right now, oh man, could this be very ugly for the stock if we have increased volume and we continue going down? But also, I'm going to draw a line right over here, potentially at the $1,100 mark, where we have found previous resistance before, so potentially being the new support line. Maybe we bounce off from these current levels now. But right now for the weekly, today being Friday, it's going to look like it might close around these levels. Oh, that's a really ugly candle. And PayPal stock on the daily can't break that 20 EMA, still consolidating between that 180 level and 195 until we break that 195, test that 50 EMA at the 200, and then go from there to 215, fill in the gap at 225. We still have a long ways to go with PayPal. Big money could be accumulating at these prices, or maybe we just sell off even more from here. But again, with the Nasdaq selling off as much as it has for the last few days, PayPal more or less has remained unchanged. Again, is trading within that range. So just like Facebook, because the valuation is so low, because PayPal has been sold off so much, it's not being hit as hard as other names. Names like Square that just 6 months ago were near $300 are now trading well below 50% from its all-time highs. Oh boy, now sitting at $144 a share. When does the pain end for this one? We see on the daily this one has been oversold for quite a while. Let's take a look at the weekly for this one. Where are the moving averages? Yeah, we're completely disconnected from those ones. When do we get real support for Square? Who knows? This one is a falling knife for now. Again, officially oversold on the weekly as well, so we got to see when we find buying pressure for Square. And lastly, taking a look at JP Morgan Chase stock on the weekly. So we bounced very nicely a couple weeks ago from that 50 EMA. And taking a look at the daily, we had a gap up. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we pull back, fill in that gap, touch those moving averages, and then potentially finding strength and then moving on upward. And lastly, I want to take a look at Disney stock on the weekly. So far, so this one looks like it is potentially recovering. We'll take a look and zoom out in a second, but we could potentially draw an uptrend, something like this for now. We'll revisit this later in the future, and we zoom out, we see this uptrend that I drew touching here back in June of 2020, in October of 2020, and then after this huge fiasco that we sold back down and found buying pressure at the end of November, early December, we touched it over here. So we have this long trend line, and we also have this trend line that we keep touching and then selling off from, touching and selling off from. And just like Bitcoin, just like Amazon, we're going to see eventually a compression into 2022, and then it's going to have to decide, go up or go down. Again, it could choose at any point to do whatever it wants, but if it doesn't choose by that point, it'll compress and then be forced to choose at a certain point.
Alright, and that's the end of my video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, let me know in the comments below, what do you think is going on? When will the madness end? When will the volatility end? Is it just getting started, or is this going to be the end of it, and then we're going to have a nice January into the end of the month, into February, which is seasonally a volatile time? Let me know in the comments below. As always, subscribe and like, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.